In today's video, I'm attempting to survive 30 days or 1 month in the long dark on Stalker difficulty. Throughout this journey, I'll face countless challenges, including harsh weather conditions, injuries caused by animals, and the constant threat of being stalked by wolves. Along the way, I'll make plenty of mistakes, but learn from each one. I'll also be exploring vast areas, discovering incredible loot, battling bears, and hunting will be a big part of this experience as I learn the game's mechanics. Let's see how far I can make it. I set the difficulty to Stalker and decided to start in Coastal Highway. I'd heard it's a great starting area from a few recommendations in the comments of other videos. I began, as usual, running around and picking up sticks. Heading down the mountain, I came across some acorns, though I've never figured out how to use them. Soon I spotted a building and looted it. Nice, I found some wood, clothing, and a toolbox. Feeling good, I decided to explore further. Pushing further down the mountain, I came across quite a few houses, very nice indeed. But then I heard a wolf. Damn, it was chasing me. I ran into the closest house I could find. Phew, that was a close one. Inside, I looted the house and picked up food, clothing, and water. I also scrapped the towels for cloth to make torches and bandages. Once I felt safe, I headed out and looted a few cars, finding a sewing kit, a battery, and haha, matches. Hell yeah. As I continued, I heard wolves nearby again, and I darted into another building. To my surprise, it was packed with good loot, including matches. I couldn't help but wonder, was this really Stalker difficulty? A quick game quit and reload confirmed that it was. I reloaded from my save and went back to looting. I hit the jackpot, food, a workbench, medical supplies, a lantern, and oh yeah baby, a gun. One thing I've learned about the long dark is to check every nook and cranny, and sure enough, I found 5 rifle bullets tucked away. This was great. I moved all my food and unnecessary items into containers to keep things organized. Somewhere along the way, I'd also picked up a sewing book. I planned to read it during my downtime, making sure to use the lantern if I needed to read at night. I had no idea what was going on with this good loot finding. I also found a pry bar, a gun book, and a whetstone to sharpen weapons like knives and axes, if I ever found any. It was crazy how much good stuff I found so early in the run. This felt like it was going to be a good run. I read a bit of my gun book and then went to bed. But I forgot to turn the lantern off. Idiot. When I woke up, I crafted a torch and harvested some gloves to get cured leather. I planned to head out and use the pry bar to open car trunks, but the weather was absolutely horrible, keeping me indoors. I made the most of the situation by sitting near a window for light and finishing my book as the storm raged outside. Honestly, it was cozy. I even snacked on some candy bars while studying. When the storm cleared, I ventured out to loot some trunks. Carefully checking for wolves, I really hate them in this game since they've ended a few of my runs. The first car trunk I opened had a nice piece of clothing and painkillers, but as I moved to the next car, I spotted a wolf on the road. A second one lurked to my left. Taking one out would be great, especially since I have a grudge against wolves. Taking both out would be even better. I crouched down and carefully watched them. One of the wolves began moving toward me, offering an easy shot. This time I was determined not to waste my ammo like I had in previous runs. I took aim and fired. I hit it, one down. Surrounding for other lurking predators, I decided to make a fire and skin it before the cold got to me. As I started lighting the fire, I noticed the wolf's companion was still nearby, growling angrily, probably seeking revenge. Come on fire, and finally it caught, and the warm glow erased my fear. I pulled out my gun and fired again, killing the second wolf. That's when I realized I didn't have anything to harvest the wolves with. Pretty funny in hindsight. I made the best of my situation by boiling water, looting more cars, and even finding 10 revolver rounds and another book. When I got home, I discovered a hacksaw. I had somehow missed it earlier. It was right in front of me the whole time. Feeling blind as ever, I went back out, made another fire, and finally gutted and skinned the wolf. I dropped the guts and hide in my house to cure and destroyed some crates to make space. That night, I went to bed feeling like a champion. Finally, I had beaten those wolves. The next morning, I woke up, did some reading while the snow raged outside. Eventually, I did push out and went to a nearby house. I scored some great loot, a rabbit, some soup, and maple syrup, which is always a win. I also gathered a ton of cloth. Once home, I treated myself to a reading session, but I had to take a break because apparently you can't read on an empty stomach. I returned to the wolf I hadn't harvested. This was also a great opportunity to gather some crow feathers. Afterward, I decided to check out some more houses. On the way, I spotted a deer in the snow. I crept up to it, took aim, and damn it, I missed. What a pity, and what a waste of a bullet. I moved on to loot a house and found some rabbit meat, plenty of clothes and gloves that I could scrap for materials. I continued looting around, spray painting on areas I'd already searched to keep track. I found some decent items, though nothing too exciting. The last house was a bit eerie. It had lighter fuel, but more disturbingly, someone had died in the bathroom. I couldn't help but wonder what their story was. After returning home, I cleaned my gun and crafted some hooks and improvised crampons. I did a little more before heading to bed. In the morning, I finished crafting and equipped the crampons, gaining the sure footing benefit. With that done, I ventured back out. There was one house left to loot. Inside, I found more matches and a moldy fish. I brought everything back home before heading out again to explore. On my way, I spotted another deer. I waited patiently, lined up my shot, and missed again. It was incredibly frustrating wasting another bullet. Feeling defeated, I moved on and noticed a house nearby. I entered. I found food, and most importantly, a hunting knife. However, I was now too heavy to carry everything, so I unloaded some items and continued exploring. Something caught my eye, a crash plane. I looted bags as I made my way up to it, hoping to find something amazing, hopefully a flare gun. Unfortunately, the loot was disappointing. I couldn't stop wondering about the story behind the crash. Where were the passengers? There weren't any bodies to be found. Sadly, I lost about 2 in-game days of progress. The one good thing is I knew where to find some really good loot. I spotted a deer in the distance. I had one bullet left. I lined up my shot, took it, and damn it, the deer ran off into the trees. In my last save, I'd managed to kill it, but this time, it seemed wounded and kept running. Frustrated, I watched as it disappeared into the distance. Just as I was about to give up, the deer turned and ran back toward me. I thought I might have a chance, but I had nothing else to kill it with. It didn't seem ready to die, and before long, it bolted again. Bye bye, dinner, I muttered to myself. With my gun basically useless now, I set it on the table. It was just weighing me down. I decided to head out, even though it was night. Not something I'd risk on interloper. I grabbed my torch and started walking. I had a specific destination in mind, a nearby house where I knew there was a windbreaker. The night sky was stunning though. As I walked, I saw movement ahead. A deer. Wait, no, not a deer. A bear. An impossible fight for me at this point. I kept my distance and continued on until I arrived at the house. I looted it for supplies, and as expected, I found the windbreaker. I settled in for the night and slept until morning. The next morning, I set my sights on retrieving the arrows and revolver I had found in the save I'd lost. I looted a nearby body and then made my way to a boat where I remembered finding arrows. Strangely, they weren't there this time. I moved on to the fishing shack where I did manage to find the revolver. At least that was still there. I also found fishing tackle and started a fire to keep warm and make some tea. As I sipped my tea, I debated my next move. I knew there were some buildings past the logs, and even a mine shaft. Should I push on or explore new territory? After a bit of hesitation, I made my decision. The wrong one, as it turned out, and I got very, very lost. Visibility was terrible, and I stumbled through the snow. I came across 2 random hacksaws lying on the ground and a dead wolf. I made a fire nearby and harvested the wolf. Feeling slightly better, I pushed on until I found a cabin. It was surrounded by rabbits, a potential food source. If I decided to stay for a while anyways. I looted the cabin, but it was nearly empty, so I kept moving on. Out on the ice, I spotted a locker and thought it might hold something interesting, a stash maybe. But when I opened it, it was completely empty, pretty damn disappointing. I scanned the horizon and saw houses in the distance. That would be my next destination. On my way there, I looted a nearby fishing shack and found rifle ammo. Finally, something useful. But now I was overencumbered and moving painfully slow. It reminded me of playing Fallout New Vegas, where I'd use my hairband to hold down the analog stick, letting my character slowly walk forward. It worked well enough until I hit something in my path. But yeah, no safe to fall back on. Eventually, I made it to a fishing camp. I looted a house, dropped the guts and hired to cure, and planned to return here later. I continued looting, moving supplies into a box so I could walk faster. The houses, though, didn't hold much. I woke up, finished reading my book, and prepared to head out for the day with a plan in mind. I ran out onto the frozen ice, aiming to loot the nearby fishing shacks. The first shack was a disappointment, nothing noteworthy, but the second one was luckier. I found some revolver rounds. Outside, I looted a car and came across a dead body. Curious, I followed the trail to see where he might have come from. That's when I discovered a photo. It piqued my interest, but I decided to save that exploration for later. I headed toward the houses I'd mentioned earlier. The first one had a few decent finds: boots, some clean water, and most importantly, a can opener. The second house didn't offer much, so I pushed on, deciding to make my way to the mine shaft I'd been planning to explore. On the way, I got distracted by some mushrooms. I stopped to harvest them, taking a moment to appreciate the quiet. With my torch ready, I ventured into the mine shaft. Not far in, I found a hatchet, tucked inside a tool case. It reminded me of the forest, how you had to search caves for tools while fending off mutants and cannibals. Thankfully, there were no such horrors yet. I explored deeper into the mine, but there wasn't much loot. At the end of the tunnel, I came across an elevator. It was completely unresponsive though. I decided to leave the mine for now. I thought about going back to base, but fatigue was catching up with me. Instead, I found one of the nearby houses and rested for the night. The next morning, I enjoyed a beautiful sunrise on my way back home. Once home, I spent the day repairing some clothes and organizing my supplies. I laid out all of my food and meds for a visual inventory, taking stock of everything I had. It was a good day, one of preparation. I had plans to gather saplings and craft a bow, part of my training for a future interloper run. I searched around for a while, but found nothing. At least I managed to collect some wood. Hunting was also on my mind. I wanted to get wolf skins for a wolfskin coat. With that in mind, I reloaded my rifle and placed my weapons on the table. Tomorrow would be a long day. After a good sleep, I woke up ready to start the day with a bit of violence. As I stepped outside, I was about to start a fire when I heard something: a deep, unsettling sound. My heart raced as I bolted back inside. I waited until it was quiet, then cautiously ventured out again. I quickly decided to put on my headphones. It was raining outside, so I couldn't really hear the game well. On the way, I spotted a deer. I stalked it through the snow, my fingers and face freezing. Eventually, I saw not one but two deer, although only one gave me a clear shot. I took aim, held my breath, and fired. A clean kill. It was too cold to stay out much longer, so I quickly made some tea, had a warm meal. Feeling somewhat rejuvenated, I built a fire near the deer carcass and skinned it, leaving the raw meats in the snow. The smell quickly drew wolves to the area though. I tried to keep them at bay, and I shot one with my revolver, but only managed to wound it. A rifle shot was wasted entirely. Frustrated and desperate, I grabbed a torch and charged at the wolves, screaming to scare them off. It worked for the most part, and I even managed to kill one with my rifle. Once the area was cleared, I cooked some of the deer meat over the fire and finally headed home. Exhausted but satisfied, I went to bed, feeling accomplished despite the challenges of the day. I wanted to skin the wolf I'd killed earlier, but by the time I got to it, it was frozen solid. With nothing else to do there, I collected some wood and set out to explore. As I wandered, I encountered another wolf. Luckily, I managed to scare it away. I looted some nearby houses, but they didn't have anything useful. As I pushed further, I spotted what looked like a watchtower in the distance. Intrigued, I decided to check it out. The climb was exhausting, and I was starting to regret this decision. To make matters worse, wolves seemed to be everywhere. One rushed me, and I shot at it, and then another. Eventually, I came across a sapling. I made a mental note to come back for it later. Suddenly, a wolf rushed me from the right side, scaring the hell out of me. Out of fear, I shot more rounds than I needed to. Finally, I reached the lookout tower. Relief washed over me as I climbed up, but the tower itself was nearly empty. A rope and a single bullet were all it offered. I noticed a hint that said survey. I wasn't sure how to use it, and after some hesitation, I decided to Google it. Not something that I like to do. When I figured it out, I realized just how useful it was. I could map the area around me. I decided to stay at the tower for the night. Before bed, I made a fire and allowed myself a rare moment of peace. Standing there, staring out at the view, I felt a sense of calm. The worries and dangers of survival melted away. Just for that brief moment, everything was okay. Morning came, misty and cold. I destroyed a chair in the tower and was rewarded with a rifle bullet. I decided to head back down to get the sapling I'd seen the day before. Confidence boosted by my single bullet, I made my way to the sapling, but confidence can be dangerous. I heard a wolf nearby. It's fine, I thought. I had a torch. I ran forward, trying to scare it off. That was a mistake. The wolf leapt at me, and we fought.
Gotta stop that.
I managed to shoot it, but not before it left me bloodied and beaten. Both of us limped away. I made it back to the lookout and patched myself up. A cup of tea helped me steady my nerves. It was time to head down the mountain. Using the rope I'd found, I rappelled down and finally found a sapling. I hadn't realized how quick it was to harvest them. I could have probably gotten the one from earlier without losing much time. Oh well. At the base of the mountain, I was at some cabins I'd looted earlier. I ate and rested for a while to recover from my injuries. The wind howled outside and paranoia set in. Wolves had proven they could be stealthy hunters. I decided to head back to the cabins near the logs for the night. The journey was tense, but I made it. After eating and tending to myself, I slept deeply, knowing the next day's task was to head back home. I put off a bit and decided to get the DLC. When I reloaded my save, it notified me that there are now cougars in the game. Very fun. Like wolves and bears weren't already a big enough worry. I'm not sure what else the DLC has. I haven't really checked. I'm just really enjoying the game and decided to get the DLC. I also learned from a comment that I could survey an area using charcoal. I thought this was only from lookout points, like a Ubisoft game where you have to survey an area from a radio tower. But this was a very useful tip, so thank you. Sadly, I lost some footage. I record using the built-in option on the Xbox Series S. I can only record 4 minutes at a time or 1 minute of past footage. It's not ideal and I apologize. Here's what happened. I went out to explore and saw a bear. It was walking slow, so I took a shot at it with my rifle. It then recreated the scene from The Revenant. I also lost my revolver in this brutal attack. The next day, I saw it die in front of me and harvested it. I put most of the meat in the cooler, the skin and the guts on the ground, and in the morning I made a fire and started cooking all this meat. I was warned in the comments not to risk eating predator meat. I was just doing this to level up my cooking so that one day I would be able to eat predator meat more safely. I also had fat but no pot to cook it in. I cooked bear meat late into the night, dropped the meat in the snow so it would last longer, and then slept. My next goal was to head back to my main base. I'd also quickly fetched the revolver before heading out. My clothes had also been ruined by the bear, so I needed to sort that out too. When I got home, I noticed some new items thanks to the DLC. As I was busy by the fire, I hadn't realized the bear had sneaked up on me, scaring the hell out of me. I ran to safety. Once it was gone, I quickly headed to the house up the hill to see if there was anything useful. But then I saw it, the bear. It seemed to have claimed this area as its new territory, casually walking down the road. I glanced around me. There was a house behind me and another one down the hill, two safe places to run. I took aim and shot. Without hesitation, I bolted. The bear gave chase, but I was fast enough to make it to the house. I paused to catch my breath and looked around, but the bear wasn't following me anymore. I stepped out cautiously, venturing a little further from the house, and then spotted it between the trees. The bear seemed calm now, unaware of my presence. I had one bullet left. I raised my rifle, took aim, and fired. Another bear down. Two in just 2 days. Not bad at all. I quickly built a fire beside it and started harvesting what I could. Food was running low, so eating bear meat became my only option. Back at home, I cooked the meat and started crafting the bow. Unfortunately, I didn't have any arrows yet, so I placed it on the shelf alongside my rifle, which was now out of ammo. With limited options, I decided it was time to return to my fishing base. All this bear meat eating felt risky. I didn't want to end up with intestinal parasites. To secure a better food supply, I planned to make snares and fishing traps. I made a snare and a fishing trap before retreating to bed. Cold and exhausted, morning came, and I noticed my saplings had cured. Feeling restless, I decided it was time to move on. I was tired of this place and wanted to explore a new region. By now, I had survived 19 days, and I was proud of myself. I had a lot of preparing to do though. To make the most of my resources, I decided to craft some fire-hardened arrows. I headed to my other house, gathered supplies, and lit a fire. Just as I started working, a storm hit. Great timing. I decided to wait it out at my main base, where I made the arrows and enjoyed a warm meal with some coffee. Feeling better, I attempted to hunt a deer. My aim, unfortunately, needed more practice. Also, I doubt fire-hardened arrows could go through deer hide. Worth a try though. Switching focus, I made a fishing hole, set my trap. It occurred to me I could probably make more traps, but that was the issue. I was becoming too comfortable here. The next morning, I checked the fishing trap, only to find the hole had frozen and my line had snapped. I set it up again. I tried hunting a deer once more, missed, and broke an arrow in the process. To make matters worse, I couldn't find my other arrow. It was either lost or I'd hit the deer without realizing, though there was no blood trail. Luckily, I managed to catch a fish, which I cooked and ate. It wasn't much, but it was a warm meal. I then saw moose. I've seen countless videos of people online thinking moose are harmless, only to get completely wrecked by them. They're incredibly dangerous. Still, I decided to test my luck. I tried using my bow, but you can guess how that went. Missed. Every shot. Frustrated, I attempted to bait it into charging me, hoping for a close range shot. And even when it was almost on top of me, I missed again. Determined, I followed it and kept missing. Out of sheer anger, I pulled out my revolver. At first, it seemed like I was doing some decent damage, so I kept chasing it. But man, that thing could eat bullets. I emptied my cylinder into it. And then the tables turned. The moose charged me and smashed me to the ice. It was like nature itself was punishing me for my arrogance. I limped home with broken ribs, patched myself up, and rested. The moose had turned into a boss fight I wasn't equipped to handle, and with my injuries, I couldn't travel far or fight effectively. My only option was to limp my way to my other base, far away from this moose's territory. Once I reached my other base, I saw my cured guards were ready, which gave me a small moral boost. I made a big fire, boiling water and cooking leftover bear meat late into the night. Cups of warm coffee kept me awake as I worked. The next morning, I crafted 3 more fire-hardened arrows. Despite being stuck with broken ribs, I knew I needed to stay productive. I couldn't travel far, so I decided to explore closer to home. During my small excursion, I collected some acorns and stumbled upon a trailer. The trailer turned out to be a treasure trove. Inside, I found a windbreaker, a flashlight, some food, and after double checking in the dark corners, 10 revolver rounds. This was a game changer. I could finally scare off wolves. Though, to be fair, the revolver felt more like a noisemaker than an actual weapon. I'd never killed anything with it. It just made enough noise to send predators running. I wandered out and gathered some mushrooms, realizing my role had shifted from hunter to gatherer. While admiring the stunning view, I came across 4 birch saplings, a small but satisfying find. I headed home to drop everything off and decided to explore Jack Rabbit Island. The name made sense. As soon as I arrived, rabbits were everywhere. I set up a snare and took in the calm atmosphere. The island felt safe, peaceful even. It was the perfect spot to rest and recover. The next morning, I checked my snare but found it empty. I moved it to a new spot and spent some time practicing with my bow. I managed to bag 1 small rabbit. I still don't know how I kept missing that massive moose. As I ran back home, I enjoyed the sunrise. In the distance, I spotted some crows circling. Something was there, but first I needed to deal with the rabbit. I harvested carefully, choosing not to carry any meat around the island to keep it peaceful. The skin and guts were on the ground to cure. That's when I realized I'd made a mistake. Back at the fishing base, I'd accidentally left my cured saplings and brought the green ones instead. I dropped the uncured saplings here to let them dry. Then I set out to see what the crows were circling. I found a dead body and a small fireplace. Poor guy, his journey had ended here, but at least he had a nice pair of socks. Not far away, I spotted a branch and a bit further on, a boat. Beneath it, I found some flare shots. Unfortunately, they weren't much use without a flare gun. I then found a hatchet and a few arrows. One was broken, but the others were in good condition. A solid find overall. I also came across some salt deposits, another useful resource. I kept myself busy that day, wandering around the island, appreciating its quiet beauty and making the most of what I could find. It felt good to have some purpose, even in the small things. I made a fire in the evening and crafted more fire hardened arrows. I harvested the broken arrow for a few feathers and an arrowhead. I called it a night. In the morning, I checked my snare and found one rabbit. Not bad. Encouraged, I went out hunting and managed to kill three more rabbits, bringing my total to four. I skinned and gutted them, then cooked the meat. It was a productive hunt, and I had only lost two arrows in the process. Later, I attempted to hunt a deer but couldn't get close enough to get a clean shot. I set out to explore another house. On my way, I stumbled upon a peculiar sight. More arrows. Two hatchets stacked on top of each other, and some extra fishing tackle. It seemed like a glitch, as though the items had duplicated. I took a risky detour to the edge of the ice to loot a bag. Unfortunately, it didn't contain anything useful, just some black and white film. When I finally reached the house, it didn't have much to offer either. At least I got to enjoy a stunning sunset. My ribs were starting to feel better, but I'd made up my mind, no more messing with moose, absolutely not. While exploring, I found a trading box, though I wasn't sure how to use it. I decided to sleep in the house for the night. In the morning, I decide whether to continue exploring or return to the Jack Rabbit Island, which would probably be much safer. It was day 26, I was ready to push out again. That's when I struck gold. I found some flares and a flare gun. This was a game changer. I've seen videos on my YouTube shorts of people taking down bears and even moose with a single flare shot to the head. Revenge was finally within reach. I also had two bearskins curing, which meant I could craft a bearskin coat soon. If I was going to take down that moose, I'd do it in style. My confidence was growing, and I couldn't wait to get my revenge. I found a note in a car about a stash near my fishing base. Intrigued but freezing, I decided it was time to return home. On the way, I collected some feathers and managed to skin a deer. Exhausted and unable to run, I was nearly home when two wolves charged at me, firing off two rounds. I managed to scare them away. Finally, I made it back, utterly drained. I docked off the deerskin and picked up some cured guts. The weather was unforgiving, so I spent the rest of the day repairing my gear. The wolves must have sensed my weakness, because they seemed bolder than ever. The real issue, though, was my dwindling food supply. It was time to head back out. The wolves were relentless, but my gunshots kept them at bay. After a long walk, I made it to my fishing base and ate some bear meat. To my relief, one of my bearskins was fully cured. I decided to wait another day for my ribs to heal before retrieving the second skin and starting on the bear coat. Most of the day was spent sleeping. I tried crafting arrows, but it was too cold to focus. By day 29, I was feeling better and decided to head back out. As I was making my way home, a wolf rushed me. I thought my gunshot would intimidate it, but the opposite happened. The wolf proved it was the boss, not me. Back home, I started crafting the bear coat, though it was clear it would be a long process. To keep my energy up, I downed sodas in between crafting sessions. I worked until nightfall, and then went to bed. When I woke up, something strange was happening. It was another one of those eerie power surges. This time, though, I heard a voice. For the first time in days, I heard another voice that wasn't my character stating the obvious. We exchanged a few words, and it led to a trade. That's what the trading box was for. I asked for 10 rifle rounds, a book, and a recipe. After, I listened to the radio, enjoying the brief return of electricity. The next morning, I finished crafting the bear coat. It was impressive but incredibly heavy. Determined to move on, I packed up my belongings and started heading back. The journey was grueling. The weight of my supplies slowed me down to a crawl, and eventually I had to drop some items just to make progress. Even then, it took me 25 minutes to reach my destination. It was a long, exhausting trek. I also had cabin fever after spending so much time making that damn bear coat, but the long walk forced me to stay outside, which I desperately needed. I had to spend 24 hours outdoors to shake it off. Night came quickly, but luckily I had my lantern. No predators lurked, and I finally made it home. As soon as I arrived, I began offloading my gear and unpacking supplies. I made a fire and started boiling water. Lots of it. I needed it for my trade. Setting up my sleeping bag by the fire, I spent the night outside. The next morning, I went inside to gather a few things, and as soon as I stepped back out, I spotted it, a bear. Standing close enough to my house to retreat if things went south, I drew my bow and aimed. The bear would look like a pincushion if it came to that, but I got lucky. One arrow, one perfect shot, and the bear collapsed. I'd found its weakness. Harvesting began immediately. I prioritized the hide and the guts, putting them to cure as quickly as possible. The cold was relentless, so I made a fire and worked tirelessly to harvest the meat. By the end, I had a mountain of bear meat, enough to last me a long time. The next day, I decided to hunt down the stash mentioned in the note I'd found in the car. On my way, I picked some cattails. They'd be a lifesaver if I ever ran low on food. Eventually, I found the stash: revolver rounds, rifle rounds, and some food. Pretty good. I explored the area a bit, but didn't find anything significant. Maybe a path to another region, but I wasn't sure yet. That night, I stayed in a nearby cabin, waking up to a cold, windy morning. I kept scanning the area, making sure nothing was stalking me. Today, I was going to explore a new region. The route I wanted to take to a new region was blocked by fallen rocks, forcing me to backtrack to another exit I discovered the day before. I reached the stash cabin again, took a nap, and woke up to a ferocious storm. There was no moving forward in this. It was day 36. I was ready to leave. The way out was not ideal. A barely stable wooden railway bridge that swayed high above the ground. One wrong step, and 36 days of survival would mean nothing. The tension was unbearable as I crossed, my heart racing with every creak of the wood. Despite the danger, I couldn't help but appreciate the breathtaking view. If I fell, at least the view would be incredible. Still, the idea of surviving the fall only to die slowly at the bottom made me shudder. Step by step, I made it across. On the other side, the sun was rising, bathing the world in golden light. I'd made it. I was alive, and now I was ready for whatever the next region would throw at me. Thanks for watching. I know I made a few mistakes along the way, but I'll keep improving. Keep an eye out for my next adventure, where I'll be exploring a new region. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing and joining me for more. See you in the next one.